All right, CNT125 Risk Management Lab. We just got done creating passwords and enabling Telnet on our switches, and then creating passwords and enabling SSH on our routers. And we also took a minute and enabled RDP over on this Windows PC over here, the one on the right side of my map. So now we're going to do some of our first security testing. Now that we have a network up and running and we can do some things in it, we're going to test our Telnet connection to the switch, and then examine that protocol, and then test the Telnet connection to the router and examine that protocol. And the same thing with RDP. Test that RDP connection and examine that protocol. So here we go. On my Windows PC, and I'm going to do it all from this one on the left side, which is the one I'm on right now. This is the one on the left side of my network. So I'm going to, on this PC, I'm going to close any PuTTY connections. This is using my console cable. This is using my COM1, my console cable. I'm going to close that. I'm going to open up a new PuTTY connection, but this time I'm going to select Telnet. When I select Telnet, I'm now using my network card, my NIC. I'm now using the network card or the NIC, this connection here in my network for communication. I'm going to pick Telnet, notice the port it goes to, and I'm going to plug in this IP here, this first switch. I'm going to plug in 160.60.0.2 via Telnet, and I'm going to try to open that connection. Now, it's going to say, hopefully, what's the username? And I'm going to plug in my first name, Doug. That's the one we configured on the switch. Hit enter. It's going to say, what's the password? I'm going to plug in password. Remember, the cursor does not move. That helps with preventing shoulder surfing that you read about. So I need to type password with confidence and hit enter. And if I have everything right, I'm now at my prompt. Okay, I'm now at my switch prompt. I'm then going to use the enable command, enter, and I'm going to type in class. Again, the cursor's not going to move. Type with confidence. That's helping to prevent shoulder surfing. So I'm now into the switch and actually in the privilege mode, the admin mode, and I'm using this connection here, not my console cable. So I'm actually a node in the network now connecting to the switch, in this case via Telnet. Now, if any of this is not working, console back into your switch, double check IP address is correct, double check your username and password's correct, come back, close out the PuTTY connection, open a new one, and try the process again. It's very easy to miss a step in this configuration to get this running. Well, now that I have that connection, I'm going to exit out, I'm going to close this out. What I'm going to do in the next part is I'm going to Wireshark or capture that session. So I'm going to open Wireshark. I'm going to select my NIC. Okay, I should see traffic on here, hopefully. There's my Ethernet 3, good. I'm going to select that. I'm going to let that run. I'm going to open up a new PuTTY session again, and I'm going to go Telnet right back to my switch, 160.60.0.2. I'm going to connect in, username, first name Doug, password, type with confidence, enable, class, and I'll do a show run on this. I want to see the switch config. Okay, so there's my switch config. Yay, I was able to get to the switch, and I could actually make configuration changes if I wanted to. I'm going to exit out and close out that session. I'm going to come over to my Wireshark, and I'm going to stop. I'm going to click stop. What I want you to do now is we want to look at this session. We will look at some of these Telnet packets. Okay, so I'm going to put a filter in here for Telnet. So it filters out everything else, and I'm just looking at my Telnet data. And what I'm going to do is, here's my Telnet packets. Take note of the source and destination, 02 to 010, 010 to 02. So this is going from my PC directly to the switch. So here I should be seeing that, 010 to 02. Let's look at the TCP header. We see source port of 8095, destination 23. Well, 8095 is the port number of PuTTY on this device, and the 23 is the port of Telnet on the switch. Okay, let's open up the Telnet packet here, and we're going to look at this data. Well, we're going to try. Let's go up here to the top. We're going to try to. I'm highlighting these Telnet packets. I'm just using the arrow key to scroll down through, and I'm going to look down at my data window down here. I'm just kind of slowly scrolling through. Here is D, O, U, G. There's where I type my username in. It's prompting me for password. And then here's where I'm typing in password, Password. And then it says, okay, there is the switch prompt. I'm going to keep going. ENA. There's my enable command. It's like, okay, what's the password? Password is CLASS. And then here's the enable prompt, the privilege prompt. And then I typed in SHO, I did show run. And then here's the configuration showing in my screen. So as I scroll down through these telnet packets, what are we noticing? Is this data encrypted? Absolutely positively not. Because I could literally look for every single letter, DOUG, there's my username, password of PASSWORD, enable, and here's the enable password, CLASS. Nothing is hidden whatsoever. So as long as I knew to look for these packets, I could learn any username and password on these devices. Yeah, that's exactly why we don't use Telnet anymore. This is completely insecure. And there's a good chance to see, this is all ethical, we're all doing this in an ethical manner. This is a good reason to see, or a good chance to see why we don't use Telnet anymore. Alright, I'm going to save those packets. Let's do a file. We're going to do export specified packets, and we're going to save this as my Telnet Wireshark. So file, export specified packets. I'm going to go to my 125 folder, Risk Management Lab, and I'm going to call this my Telnet Wireshark. I'm going to leave that file extension. I'm going to leave display because I don't want all the other ones. I just want the Telnet packets. I'll do a save, and then I can close that out. Okay? I'm now going to move on. I'm going to use PuTTY again, but I'm going to SSH into my router. So I'm not going to SSH into this IP. Again, I'm using the network card here, and I'm going to capture the SSH session. So let's open PuTTY real quickly. We're going to do SSH now. Notice the port difference. 160.60.0.1, the router. We're going to say open. It's going to ask, do you want to accept the encryption key? Yes, I do. I'm going to log in as Doug, and I'm going to put the password in of password. Again, cursor's not going to move. There's enable, class, cursor's not going to move, and I can do show run. Okay, so my SSH connection is working. Excellent. Let's now redo that, but we're going to Wireshark it and look at the SSH session now. So open up a new Wireshark using Ethernet 3. You should see that pop up. There we go. Open up a new PuTTY session. Again, select SSH. 160.60.0.1. We're going to open. Log in as Doug. I already accept the encryption key, so I don't need to do it again. Password of password. Enable class. Show run. So I'm in the router, and I'm actually able to see the configuration. I can make changes to it if I needed to, but we'll exit out. And then I will stop my Wireshark. Okay. So now what we're going to do, let's look at our Wireshark session on this guy. So here, here's where we did our session. Let's take a look now at, let's try to apply a filter for SSH and see if we can see our SSH packets. Well, first thing we see up here is we see 01 going to 010. And then 010 to 01. So it's me talking directly to the router. If you look up here in the very first two, we have the server and client, and then we see here key exchange, and here's the client Diffie-Hellman and key exchange, new keys, and now we're communicating. Well, this should give you a clue right off the bat. We're swapping encryption keys so that anything from here on out should be encrypted. So if I scroll down through these, I'll go down in here. Here's my Ethernet header, IP header. If I look at the TCP header, 8653, that's PuTTY, 22 is SSH. I'll go here. Here's 8653, that's my PuTTY application. Going to 22, which is the SSH port. If I open the SSH header, here's our SSH version 2. Let's try to go down through a couple of these to see if we actually see any data. And in this case, it's not showing an actual like data field, because it's saying right here, this is encrypted. This is encrypted data. I'm not seeing anything other than just this right here indicating that this data is encrypted. Stop trying to look any further, if you will. So this is my SSH session with the router, but all of this data is encrypted. I'm not seeing any commands. I'm not seeing any usernames. I'm not seeing any passwords, because this is encrypted. This is precisely why remote connections to network devices is now the default is SSH, for this reason. It would be very hard to extract data from this. So what I'll do here is I'm going to save these SSH packets. So we'll do File, Export Specified Packets, and we'll say SSH Wireshark this time, showing that we looked at our SSH packets. Displayed, we'll say Save, and now we've looked at our SSH connection. All right, the last one we're going to look at is our RDP. So I'm going to close out my Wireshark. This time I'm actually going to just start the Wireshark, and then I'll do my RDP at the same time. So now that we've done a couple connections, so what I'll do is I'll start my Wireshark here. I'm going to make sure my other PC is awake. I'm going to make sure my PC on the right side of my network is awake, that it's not falling asleep. So I'll start the Wireshark. And then I'm going to open my remote desktop protocol. There's my Ethernet 3. So over here, I'm going to type in RDP. There's my remote desktop connection. I'm going to use that. I'm going to plug in the IP address of that other computer, 160.60.32.10. I had to double check my IP address over there. I'm going to say connect. I'm going to plug in the username and password. I'm going to use the CNT student account and CNT class passwords. So CNT student, make sure we have no typos there, student, and we're going to do CNT class. We're going to accept this. Okay, are we accepting this certificate? Yes, we are. And now I am literally connected to the PC on the right side of the network, and I left a note over there so you knew. Here is if I do an IP config on this guy, IP config, there is the PC I'm connected to, and I left a note on the desktop. This is PC2 on the right side of my network. I now have control of this PC through my RDP connection, which is very handy for troubleshooting, helping people fix problems, maybe even connecting into this and doing changes or updates or etc. So this is my remote desktop connection from client to client. All right, once I'm done working with that, I'm going to close that connection out. And I should now be back to my regular PC, the PC on my left side of the network. Now that I've done that, I'll stop my Wireshark over here. And let's take a look at these packets. So in here, in Wireshark, we're going to use the RDP-UDP filter, RDP-UDP filter. And that should show me my RDP packets right here. I'm going to take a peek at these. Let's look at the source and destination. We're going from 010 to 3210, so we know we're going between the two. We have a client hello up here. Then we have some packets in here. Well, let's take a look at our data here. Let's open up this guy. We see Ethernet, IP, UDP, and we see RDP. This is dummy data, okay? But let's look at some of these down here. Am I seeing any sort of significant... Actually, here we go. Here's your client key exchange. That should be a clue. And we're seeing TLS there. Okay. If we have a key exchange, a client key exchange, that's giving us a clue, is this data plain text or encrypted? Well, the key exchange is letting you know this is encrypted. So as I look at this data now, again, I'm not going to pull out anything usable like passwords like we had before, because this is encrypted data as well. So here's some application data down here. We'll go down to these and see. Here's your transport layer security. This right here, if I keep going, is encrypted application data. All right. So we're going to save these packets as well. Do File, Export Specified Packets, and we will call this our RDP Wireshark. And I'll save this one as well for submission to D2L. So there's a quick look at our protocols, seeing that Telnet is not secure, SSH is, and RDP for connecting to clients is secure. So as we're thinking network network connections, we're thinking secure protocols.